Welcome to Trauma Undone. I am your host, Natasha Phillips, and today we have Prana, the Black Shaman, sitting with me on the couch. I am so excited to be talking with him and finding out these alternative methods and different approaches to healing trauma. Prana, we are so happy to have you in the studio with us.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here, especially at a place where there's trauma being undone.
Thank you. So Prana, I'd love to know a little bit, and I'd love our viewers to know a little bit about your journey. Like, how did it begin? Because this is not where you started.
This is so true. And it's funny that you would ask that because it did all start with trauma. So for me, myself, during the time when I was going through my journey, I went through a divorce and I lost everything. And my family was taken away from me. At least at that moment, I feel like that's what was taking place. With that taking place, it catapulted me in a place of where a person going through what I was going through, depression or whatnot, may feel like it was a dark place in space. So that's where I landed at, and it allowed me to have to sit with myself. And I began to examine the things that was going on, trying to figure out what went wrong. In actuality, it was nothing that went wrong. Everything had went right. And with that being said, it pushed me to dig deeper into who I am today. And it forced me to meditate due to having a lot of alone time. And during my meditation, it's like my senses turned on, in the sense of having that alone time was more so of a focused time on who I am as a being here on this earth. So that's how you got Prana. A lot of meditation in a long time and self-reflection and examining the trauma that I had went through in my life during that time.
So how did you examine the trauma that you went through? Like, you did meditation. Were there feelings that came up? Were there times in your life that you started to recall these things? And then how did you work through it?
Yeah. For me, examining these things was simply just having a perception on the outside of myself. So I stepped on the outside of myself without knowing consciously what was taking place. I would reenact the scenes in my head and question myself. So it became self-reflection, self-conversation, just dealing with me as a whole. What could I have had done to make this go a different way? Only to find out nothing, because everything that happens for a reason. And as you know, every reason has a season. So it was time for me to begin to grow to who I am now. And I had to go through that to open those doors to put me in the place that I am now, doing what I do. And during the process of examining myself, I examined my surroundings, the situation that took place, the steps that we had to go through together, and what all happened, as I would say, as it was falling apart. And I began to like puzzle pieces back together. And this is when I began to look on the outside of myself, at myself, without knowing that we can even do this. And I realized that everything that happens to you is happening for you. Some would say a gift or a curse is a gift at the same time, or the other way around. So I started looking at the jewels and what was the blessing in it, if you will. And I realized I didn't lose my family. I was separated from my family so I can grow and be a better me for my family. And that's what actually took place. So after acknowledging myself, I began to acknowledge situation at hand. The situation at hand was not just my situation. As we all know, divorce rate is very high and always has been, no matter what background you come from. And I started to question, not me anymore. I started to question, as you will say, the universe. Why is it that so many people married or getting divorces, and it's happening in all types of households? Evidently, you get married, you want to be together, but it's something that causes you all to not be together. So I started looking at that, and it allowed me to, while looking at myself on the outside of myself, look at the world. And I said, we have a problem here. Everybody's suffering. It's not just me. You know, whether it's you going through a divorce, whether it's you losing a job, somebody that you know somewhere goes through something that causes trauma in their life. And one thing we don't face a lot of times is facing the reality of what part we played in it. Now, I'm not saying every time is your fault, but when you begin to analyze consciously, subconsciously, superconsciously, and unconsciously, then there's more that comes into play than just you. You become more selfless than selfish. So you stop trying to defend yourself and get on the side of looking at things as a whole perspective. And that allowed me not to just dive into my trauma, but other people's trauma around me. And it pushed me to become a life coach with that experience. And I took that experience and started applying it to other people. And it was so many people that realized that there were more than one way that could have taken place in different situations. So that's what helped me become who I am, and realize after analyzing myself, it wasn't just me. So that actually made me feel better, knowing that it wasn't just my problem or something that was going on with me. And I ended up becoming best friends with the woman that I was married to at the time that had divorced. And now to this day, I help her with her problems, with her significant other. So like I said, that would, for me at that time, would have been a curse turned into a blessing.
So how did you have that transition from, because sometimes you can get so stuck in where you're at. How did you know to start to look at it as a blessing? What were the, what were the signs? How, like, I'd love to know that process.
The signs for me were of, I'm gonna say, the positive energy that had started to come over me was overwhelming versus the negative energy, what I felt was negative. I don't have this anymore. I can't do this anymore. My words started to change. It's not about I don't have. It was more so like I get to not have, because we all weigh ourselves down with responsibilities and saying I got to versus I get to. Just like a person would get up and go to work and say, I got to be at work. No, I get to be at work. And those reasons, or rather those words, take pressure off you as a whole. So for me, like to get to the point, it was positive energy that started coming in, making me feel better. The weight was lifted off my heart. I felt light in the heart, and I began to attract. People were coming to me left and right that actually experienced the same thing without us having a conversation about it. Just run into a stranger at the store, ask how they're doing, and the first thing they bring up, well, I'm going through a divorce. So that was really ironic for me at the time. I was like, what is happening here? But I realized I was being given those people at that time because I had just transitioned through the same thing, but found a positive outlook in it. So it's like the universe, boom, just dropped it on me and say, acknowledge this, realize this. And I started to do that with everything around me. Just acknowledge, not focus on the negative and acknowledge the positive in it. And instead of saying, why is this happening to me? I literally started saying, why not? I was up for the challenge of change because of how positive it made me feel in my heart. And for anyone having something heavy on them, it feels so good to feel like it's being lifted off of you. So that's what helped me. And I committed to positive things, if you will, in my life, as far as the energy of it, being in it and walking with it and accepting it as part of my life. Now, through that process, there are times where you get challenged with the negativity from the outside and also your thoughts. But the only comeback for that one comeback is, for every one negative, you come with two positives. So you have to stay in control of your day and your life, or the people on the outside will control it for you. And that's usually not a comfortable situation. You're feeling like you're forced to do anything.
It's not. And I feel like people who are stuck in their trauma, they find it difficult to do that. They find it becomes, you're dealing with so much, and it feels like the world is closing in on you. So what would you recommend to people to try and, break that cycle, to try and get into that positive mindset, to try and lighten their heart?
Well, it's two things. So if you don't mind, I want to, are you familiar with epigenetics?
Yes.
Okay, so for those of you who don't know, getting into that, it's pretty much environmental. It's a reaction to an environment behavior type due to a trauma from the past, and it actually starts with genetics. And so with that being said, this can affect one up to 3 generations. And when you look at that, if you were a victim or are a victim of epigenetics due to a past life trauma, someone in your family, or let's just say mom or dad, you have to treat that trauma, you have to go to the source. And when going to the source, that is the beginning stages of facing that trauma, or facing yourself, if you will. Because regardless of what things come from, it's embedded itself in you and made a home and become part of you. So when facing it, you're still facing yourself. Some people may run from it. So the positive thing in that is acknowledging when you do what you're doing, when you're doing it, because some people don't acknowledge it. It's just like what do they say, narcissists. And in the study of NLP, they'll tell you, when you're studying neurologistics, they'll tell you that type of person in their brain, regardless of what you say, doesn't see that they have just committed a wrong act, or for that matter, manipulated you in some shape, fashion, or form. So once again, going back to the source of it, where the trauma stems from, genetic wise, or if that is not your case and situation, as an individual dealing with trauma, an experience that you've had take place one-on-one for you as a individual being, then you have to address what took place. And if it was with another person, with that person, so you can have closure. And so you won't begin to discriminate and make everybody else in your life that person that caused the trauma in your life. Because there'll never be a new beginning for you if you keep allowing that trauma to be your next relationship, whether it's personal and emotional, or friendship, or business wise. It's still your trauma. So you have the two ways. Of course, some people like to seek what we would say professional help from the medical field and things of that nature. Me personally, I like going the more natural route. As I explained to you before, going within self, things like meditation, breath work, these help break that type of situation, because trauma is something that's embedded deep down inside. And this is the part I love about when you do stuff like meditation or breath work. The breath is the only thing that you come into this earth with. And it's also the only thing that you'll leave this earth with. You take your first breath when you're born, and you take your last breath when you leave. So that breath that's inside of you, inside of me, it starts here, deep within, deep down inside of the diaphragm. So, and that's where the trauma is usually buried. And for it to come up, just like someone that's overeating food, you have to regurgitate it out. So when you, just like they say, you speak things into reality and you see them happening, it's the same thing with the trauma. You have to get used to using the breath to project it out. In a sense, it's just like speaking it out. And there's two forms of breath. There's deep, deep, deep breaths that you can take, inhale and exhale, after holding them for a certain amount of time. And this relaxes the nervous system. And it's important that you do this while the trauma is infecting you as well. So as it's relaxing the nervous system, you're breathing it out, bits and pieces of it. And there's the rapid breath, which I also suggest that takes place for a person that's been going through trauma, because usually that's how trauma takes place. It's fast, it's quick and rapid, and it shocks the system, the body, the mind, and it ends up sticking with you. So the breath work is excellent and great for releasing trauma. And that's what I suggest over the medical. That's just my personal opinion. It's because that's what saved me. That's what I went through. I did a lot of breath work, and it does so much for you. It's like a rebirth. So it brings you happiness. It brings you all sorts of euphoric, joyous moments to override that trauma that you've experienced. And you realize you got so much to be thankful for. And there's so much you can carry with you in life on the outside other than the trauma.
So what do you say to someone who is scared to face the trauma? They know they have the trauma. It's affecting them on a daily basis, but sometimes it's really scary to have to confront it and to heal from it, because like there are those times where it might get worse before it gets better.
Yeah, definitely.
So how do you deal with that? Like how is that part of the process, and how did you get through that?
Well, Natasha, for me, I had two choices, which were the two that I just spoke about. And for me, what I know, my reason for not wanting to take the medical approach, and first and foremost, let me say this, there's nothing wrong with that. So, to each his own. But my reason for not wanting to, because I knew that there was a point in time to where the trauma had to leave and go. But what I didn't want for myself is there to be a recorded record of me breaking down and them being able to label me as they please, for whatever the case may be. There's a lot of people who has labels that's been placed on them, and it's not who they are. They were just going through something at that time, and place. So that's why I choose not to take that route. And like I said, to each his own. For some, that may be the better route, because it's somebody on the outside of themselves aiding and assisting them. And that's what some people need. Some people can't take the ongoing, if you will, taunting and the feeling of being helpless, and they need help from the outside. So whether it be a counselor and psychotherapy, or whether it be someone counseling them and nourishing their mind and their feelings back to a calm state in the medical field, either one, you would know what better attracts and pulls you in. Because one thing about us as beings, there is nothing stronger than our spirits, and what you need will be provided for you due to your thought. It comes to you. So if that's where you're being pulled, then it'll happen for you. It'll be so strong to the point somebody suggests the things that you were thinking about, and that's your confirmation. You know, like I said, but for me, the breath work and the meditation worked for me just fine. And for a person that's in between and stuck, sometimes you have to just sit. You have to just sit and let it come to you. It's not about going out and searching for the thing to help you, to put you in a place of healing. If you just sit and be patient, as they say, leave it alone, it'll come to you.
So, I mean, you have taken it, you know, much further in your own journey. You became a life coach, but then you actually became a shaman.
Yeah.
So what made you make the decision to do that?
What pushed me to become who I am now. Well, I can definitely say I was always who I am. I just wasn't in the forefront with it. It was something that I covered up because back in the days where I'm from, it was told you never reveal, these gifts. So I think it came to a point to where life itself as a whole, which is constantly evolving and changing, the universe said the world needs to know because it's no longer a in-house thing, a family thing, or a culture thing. The world needs healing. There's no secret to healing. The world needs for this to be to the forefront. So I took the initiative and put myself out there. So yeah, my family, I have a family full of shamans, but no one's active, if you will. So for me to step out everybody was just like, are you serious? And my response to that was not even yes, it was just me stepping out. And what really pushed me and said, yeah, this is the reawakening for myself. I began to travel, and in my traveling, I was always running into shamans, always. And I was like, what is this? And I knew it was my calling, but I was ignoring it. I didn't want to be the one being looked at. I just wanted to be a part of what was going on. But after running into 5, 6, 7 shamans, I was like, okay, I get it. I get it, so. And I also got to experience healing taking place, as we talked about. This is an alternative. There's things as the Bible says, everything we need to heal is already here for us. And a lot of those things can be found in nature, such as plant medicines. And I, for one, can surely attest that I've seen hundreds and hundreds on top of hundreds of people be healed with different plant medicines out there. And with that being said, a lot of them was coming to face their trauma. So when I experienced that on the outside of what I already knew, I was like, okay, this is my life. Helping people was always my thing. But being able to help people who didn't want to be sitting in hospitals or centers that, put labels on you, I knew that this was for me to help bring to the forefront people. So yeah, after seeing all those people be healed and taken care of, and personality just totally different than what it was when they came in, I just said, okay, I got to make this happen, And I've been doing it ever since. Long time. Natasha, there's a book out, and I'm actually, have you ever heard of It Didn't Start With You?
The name sounds familiar, but I haven't read it.
Okay, very good book. I cannot recall the name of the author, but it's about trauma. And he speaks on one girl in particular who used to cut herself all the time. She was a cutter. And at the end of the day, to break things down, he went in to find where her trauma lied at. She would always cut herself on her arm and say, she deserved it. I deserve it. That was her words. So after him going in and finding out what took place, it came from her mother and her father. They were in a car accident, and her mother was drunk during a car accident, and the father was ejected out of the window, and it cut him on his arms. And the mother said that she deserved to be put in jail. And she was like, I deserve to be the one that's cut up. So when that took place, with her constantly repeating those words, I deserve it, that's where the daughter got it from. She kept saying, I deserve it, every time she cut herself on her arm. So when they were able to identify that, she was no longer a cutter. She let it go.
That's amazing.
So yeah, that's how deep embedded it is within inside of us when it comes to genetics. It's so strong and powerful. So I think getting back to the basics of one, neurologically and genetic wise, we have to realize how powerful we are to change our own lives and situations around that may, what you feel may be your standard situation when it's totally not, because it's all about you changing the switch and completely turning your life around. So yeah, definitely I suggest just exploring in that sense the many different ways that you can explore to change your trauma in your life, so it can be undone.
So when you decided to become a shaman, did your healing go, did you feel like you healed yourself on another level? Like, was it so much deeper and more profound?
Oh my God, it was so profound and so deep. When I was doing the work myself, I felt amazing. I felt so good. Then when I began to travel, first, let me say, I was having so many profound experiences that I felt like I couldn't explain to anyone because no one would get me. They would think I was crazy. But then when I stepped into the shamanism and I began to travel in the different jungles and different places, and I had my experience with plant medicine, there's really no words to put to it. But I definitely experienced heaven on earth, connected with nature, and was able to see what a person may just say, oh, that's a tree and a bird. No, it's so much more that takes place. And it's important that I'm saying this because we vibrate at certain levels. We are frequencies, we are tones. And in that being said, the birds are frequencies and tones. The trees are, everything has a voice. But it is not till there's clarity within inside oneself, clarity within inside the spirit, till you're able to connect back to everything and hear the voices and become the voices that they can hear. They acknowledge you before you acknowledge yourself and the connection with them. In my neighborhood, it's so funny. I go for walks on a daily, and something takes place that I know is taking place with me, but I don't pay attention whether people are looking or not. And so here's what takes place. When I walk in my neighborhood, if you're in that area, you would think every bird in existence is following me. And that's what takes place. So recently I'm in the neighborhood and a neighbor stopped me one day and say, hey, me and my wife watches you when you go on walks. And they said, you would think a zoo has been unleashed because every animal and bird of nature is following you. And I laughed. I laugh because you never know who's watching you. But I know when I go on my walks that this is going to take place because of my connection with nature. And we all have that connection. And once you're healed of the traumas that you've been through, that you are currently carrying, then you will begin to, as I like to say, plug back in and be able to acknowledge that you're plugged in, because we are all plugged in and we all turned on. We're just not in tune with the frequencies that we're carrying. And the reason why is because of a lot of traumas. It throws you off. So yeah, when the shamanism started for me, it definitely was a whole nother world, an amazing, beautiful world that is very significant to all of us. And with that being said, I would like to say, the shamanism is just a title because we take to the forefront with it and we do nothing other than that, but I would like to say that shamanism is in all of us, because we all have the gifts of life accessible to us. We all are connected to God. We all have the need to thrive in life, and in that you go through sustainability and surviving. You as a temple, we take water for nourishment, nourishment of the body, to cleanse ourselves. And where water is everywhere, it's the ocean. So we're a part of all of that. And imagine the world without the sun at all, with plants not growing. And imagine the world without water, nothing being nourished, everything be dried out. So it's a balance. It's like yin and yang. And you and I both have that in us, the need for, the balance, the yin and the yang. And with that being said, feminine energy And masculine energy is at a call for a balance within inside ourselves. And just like the earth, sometimes the earth will quake to create a balance. The earth quaking is the same as it being relevant to you maybe having to throw up to create a balance in your body. So connecting with yourself in nature allows you to know that once you do that, there's a strong healing taking place to help remove the trauma so that can be done and over with. Now, that's not to say that you won't have other experiences that create trauma in your life, but because you now have the knowledge of what to do, these traumas won't stay in your life. They may come as a test to see if you allow it to be trauma in your life.
So can you, as part of your healing process, just be in nature and you can start to change your frequency and reconnect? Or is it a whole journey that you need to go through in order to really connect with everything that's around us?
I think that being in nature is an amazing start. When I started, I was not in nature. I was just in my home, all alone in the dark. But I think that was just for me because it definitely made me great at meditating. And you can do the same thing in nature. But nature has, you got the sun and you got the nighttime. To me, I was just in the house. So I never even saw the sun. During that process, it was a whole 11 months. And I didn't step out until the 12th month, which was right at a year. And I didn't realize so much time had went by. I was so down, if you will. But nature is definitely a good calling to help one ground itself and be at a point of relief from that trauma. Trees, I love trees. Being able to sit at the root of a tree is so grounding. It takes so much from you. They did a study, a scientific study. You can look at it on YouTube. And they took these wires, connected it to a tree and also connected it to a man. And based off the man's emotions, or where he was at in the state of life, as far as a happiness or trauma, the tree put off and radiated a frequency, and it would go up and down as he went up and down in his emotions. So that itself proves scientifically. This is documented. You can look it up on YouTube, and it just shows how connected we are and how healing nature can be. The other thing that I like to suggest is having your shoes off in nature. Very grounding. There's an electric current that goes through the earth that connects to us, that helps us continue to be beings in a natural state. When you have these shoes off, when you have your shoes off, this takes place and it heals you. Also, another scientific proven fact, when taking your shoes off and standing outside, it gets rid of and rearranges what they call stacking. Stacking is when your blood cells and DNA stack up on one another and become very cluttered, if you will. And that's where anxiety comes in, and high blood pressure. But standing outside with your shoes off, it unstacks the cells. So they shown and proven scientifically, watch the blood cells move and open up and create space on the inside when a person was standing outside with the shoes off.
Oh, wow.
So with that being said, going back to the healing part of it, this also helps remove trauma. The earth pulls and it also gives. So once again, we're going back to that yin yang, the balance within inside of us also lies within the earth.
So Prana, I know you work in a very unique way with your clients.
Yeah.
I'd love you to share that, walk us through what that experience is like, because I have also so many questions in that, how do you not take on their trauma? How do you keep that separate? And how does the healing journey begin when someone works with you?
Well, definitely you have choices at different levels. I have 3 different levels. And so going back to my certification as a life coach, I'm also certified as a mindfulness master teacher. And I take those and incorporate in my consultations. And first, we'll go through that as a process. I usually work with a person for about a month just to see where they're at and how intense the work may need to be with a person. Some, if you can make it through just the consultations, then fine. There's no need to proceed to a second level or third level. But the consultations with me is pretty much on a daily, walking through a person's experience with them and telling them what caused their day to be off or what caused them to have a more productive day to where they feel that everything's going their way. But we definitely, first thing we do is always address the trauma. What brought them to me? You know, before I talk to them, I always find out what brings them to me anyway, you know, because I do readings. So I definitely always find out who I'm dealing with before I start dealing with them. And in that, I pretty much have all the information I need. So when we come to the point of the consultations and things of that nature, it's more so of me listening to them vent out the things they want to get out and how they would like to come to a solution and what they would like to have solved as a problem in their life when we're doing these consultations. And it's a lot of things that come into play, from things as small or you would say big as the diet, the ingestion. You know, a toxic environment makes a difference, and your environment being toxic can stem from anything of how you eat, what you watch on TV, what you let in your ear canals as far as melodies, tones, music. All this stuff is an influence that'll keep you at a certain place or either raise you up to a certain place. So we go through what they're taking in, putting in their bodies as far as they're eating. Then we go through what they're experiencing, not just for that moment of that day, but what's been going on all year. Or are you at peace and one with your family? Has there been a falling out? Is there something that hasn't been resolved between you and your mother or your auntie? All this stuff makes a difference. So we get into all of that. And about time that month's process up, I haven't had it be a point to where there's someone that's not 100% better or on their way to being 100% better, because I actually take the time with them. So the difference is going to a center seeking help and then they say take 2 of these and call me next week, you know, versus you and I communicating on a daily, you knowing that I'm supporting you and I'm really there for you. I also have a thing maybe I shouldn't do with 24-hour access. It doesn't matter. Call me at 1 a.m., 2 a.m., 3 a.m. I had somebody call me at 3 a.m. Last week while they were out clubbing. I was like, okay. And the first thing they said to me is, Prana, like, I just want to tell you everything. I really know that I shouldn't be here. I was like, yeah, probably not a good idea to be there, but so that's how I deal with my clients, you know, because you're not going to be able to call a doctor's office at 1, 2, or 3 a.m. You know, they have their certain scheduled work hours. So that makes a big difference, making somebody feel that they can reach out and call you. I had somebody just 2 days ago call me and they were going through an episode to where they were having a moment of anxiety taking over and their trauma was coming back through thoughts, and they were balled up and they said, I couldn't get out of bed. I couldn't start my day. But we were able to talk on the phone about it and totally made them feel open and free to be able to move around again. And so people have different experiences and not all of them are easy, but they're doable. And for me, with the type of work I do, when I go in, I'm going in already knowing that I need to be shielded from the effect of what may come out or from this person. So that's what helps me not carry Have I jumped into work so fast sometimes that I forget to shield myself? Yes, but it's a lesson for me that I learned from, and it just makes me better at what I do. I had a simple conversation one time with a gentleman on the phone. We were scheduled to talk at a certain time, and I just jumped on the phone with him instead of doing what I normally do to protect myself. And they were very, very distraught emotionally. And a lot of times the emotions hit here in this area. So when I got off the phone with them, I literally threw up.
Oh, wow.
I had stomach pains and I threw up because I was just open and I took in all of their, the trauma that they were spewing out. So that's what happens when you're not aware and protecting yourself. But it was, like I said, a lesson learned. It made me a better me. And I was like, we gonna pump the brakes. I got to make sure I'm straight before I can make sure somebody else is straight and taken care of. So yeah, it's just you never know what you're gonna get. So if the person, like I said, is not on 100% recovery route after that month, then we move to the next level, which is an option. And that next level is where I get into the herbs, the plant derivatives and things of that nature. And if they're open and willing, take a journey, hey, we go on a journey. And definitely that's something that will linger for up to 2 to 3 weeks, because it's not just removing one day or 1 week or 1 month. We're talking about a lifetime of trauma here. And a session with me usually stems anywhere from 4 to 8 hours. And it seems to be, if you ask me, they're getting longer. Last week I did a session and I realized I definitely did an 8-hour 9 to 5 shift, with him. And I was like, wow, the people are, but I'm grateful though, because people are wanting to be done with the trauma they're carrying. And I'm grateful for that, because it lets me know that I'm walking in my purpose and serving humanity. I'm on purpose and in purpose. And that's all I ever want to be, being a service to someone, helping them change their lives. And it's like each one teaches one. It spreads. It grows just like a seed planted in the ground. Everything blossoms. So someone knowing that this is an alternative and experiencing it, they just pass it on to someone else. And you begin to find yourself and find other things in the process that you didn't even know it was there. So
it's wonderful, Prana. I mean, you truly are a light in this world. You are
thank you.
Bringing
Thank
light.
you.
So if someone's listening to us now and they want to take their next step or their first step to healing, what would you say is like the first thing that they should do right now?
The first thing I would say, without a doubt, is take time to yourself. Because people deal with trauma in the way that they consistently make themselves busy, so they don't have to deal with it in the sense of when there's a quiet time, it's on their mind. So I say, take the time to yourself and stop giving your time to everybody else. Once you do that, then you can begin the process of self-reflection. If you're constantly running around doing things for other people, then there's no space or place. There's no space or place for healing, because you have sold yourself on appeasing other people in life when you haven't even come to the point of the pleasures of self.
That's beautiful. Well, Prana, we're so grateful to have you here today and to get your knowledge and to find out a little bit more about you and your journey and what you do. Where can people find you?
Well, I have an Instagram handle, Prana the Black Shaman, but I am actually, next month we're launching a full website where people can go that have an interest and find out more about me and my services. And also I do some teachings where I offer courses on. So I definitely keep you updated on that, because it's for the world, and that's what it's all about, taking this healing global.
That's
And
wonderful.
yes,
Well,
absolutely.
thank you so much, Prana. Thank you for taking the time, for sharing your knowledge and being with you today. And thank you for watching Trauma Undone. Let your
Thank
healing
you.
begin.
Blessing.